I think Jonathan, as we can probably talk about later, he's quite unique in the sense that he doesn't need to go through a production company. He kind of, he's got the connections to be able to go straight to pretty much the controller of a channel, in this case BBC Two, and say, I'd like to do this, and they'll say whether they're interested or not. So he was in the process of signing a deal with Fresh One. But before it kind of went to Fresh One, I was, helping him basically just write that kind of first top page, say this series will be this, and that day and a half turned into a week. And then when Fresh One came on board, Jonathan said to them, I've got this guy who I want to work on the series, and I was all the way along just completely expecting them to say, well, who's this guy, what's he done? And I think a lot of production companies would have gone and found their own people, but I think it's probably because Jonathan's who he is that he can call a lot of shots.
I'm on the final leg of a 7,000-mile journey through Africa. I've been coming to this continent for almost 4 decades, but in this series, I'm after something quite new. Instead of disaster, I'm in search of hope. So far, I've travelled through West Africa and East Africa.
I like working with independents. In this particular case, after the Africa series was regarded as successful, and I wanted to do something else, as it happens, and got in negotiation, got some C-Corps money to put it together, and then it went into the sort of machine of the BBC. So I rang up the controller of BBC Two and said, look, we all have to earn a living, and I want to know whether you want to do it or not. We had slightly sort of, not the easiest conversations. And at the end, in the middle of all this, slightly exasperated, I said, if I said I want to do something about Brazil, you presumably jump at it. He said, well, funnily enough, I would. But it then took about a week. So you have to hit, accidentally you hit nerves. I hadn't got in my mind to do South America, although I've always been interested in that. I've always felt South America has been very undercovered, particularly because of its huge importance when it was a continent filled with very nasty people oppressing others, and now when it's going through extraordinary flux, and when it matters globally very much. We got on well, and I thought Andy really knew his stuff about Africa in an interesting way, not in a sort of conventional reporter's way. His take was quite different, his experience was different, partly because he was doing small-scale things, essentially, and therefore much more at the grassroots of life, which was very important. And I actually said, well, I've got this idea. I told you I wanted to do this series about Africa, which I've long wanted to do. And I said, if I do it, we'll do it. So actually, this is going to... So when I started the series, it was either I was going to do it with Fresh One and he would be involved, or I wouldn't do it with Fresh One. It was as simple as that. I wanted someone who was very cheap and very good, didn't I?
When they called us,
but that was at the start.
How does this sound? I thought,
I'm sure because he doesn't blow his own trumpet, but the way he was looked at, and I think this is quite interesting for outsiders. There's this terrible sort of cautious tendency where he hasn't done television programs. It's kind of catch-22. He hasn't done television programs. Therefore, how do we know he'll be able to do this? And I said, well, I know he will be able to do it. Trust me. I've worked with quite a lot of people. I think it's quite useful to be able to combine skills, which Andy does, which is both very, very good researching skills and sort of never minding going anywhere. Very good judgment about individuals and whether they work on television. Very good editorial input, and very good administrative. So he doesn't mind going around and mocking everyone else feeling poof. Andy goes and does the bills, or goes and sorts out people's problems. Or if you lost film, he'll walk around through the middle of the night to find out where it was, or to get a new thing, or to get something mended. I'm only saying I'm only citing him as an example of the more all-round people's skills are, and the more happy people are in that, the better. And if you happen to use a camera as well, that's an additional, increasing, I think, going to be an additional bonus. To be blunt, I have overall editorial control of what we do, because I know, on the whole, what I want to do, because I don't like the kind of presenting, and never have done it, as far as I can, where you get wheeled in by a production team and you do your stuff on camera and then go home again, because I just don't find that interesting. But producers, directors play a hugely important part in actually making it happen. Once you've said this is what, I mean, crucial part, it wouldn't happen otherwise. And in particular, making me do things which I don't really think on the day that I want to do at all. Although back home I think, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Getting it, I really did not want to do this sequence, and I got shirty, and I wasn't feeling very well. Got very bad tempered. Our producer and Andy between them sort of nudged me. I must seem very prima donna-like, insofar as anyone like this could be a prima donna. And got there, and then actually, once I was really nervous about it beforehand, particularly the last part of the sequence. It's one of those things when you've done it, you think, oh, I'm so glad I did that, because it was fun and it had a point. Because the great thing about those kind of sequences is the difference between that and also very good but quite different kinds of travel programs is that it had a real political point, because we had in the middle of it the two sisters talking about their experience as indigenous people, asserting their rights and their identity.
Una importancia cultural muy grande, ya que nosotras hemos dejado y hemos sacado a las mujeres de pollera adelante, ya que ya no existe hoy el día el racismo en nosotras. Y nosotras, las cholitas luchadoras, somos un orgullo para las mujeres de pollera. Ahora, ¿quieres probar una?
I distrust...
Otro esto.
I surrender.
I think that the steer that's coming from the trust now is encouraging greater confidence. We're getting further away from the obsession with compliance. But I think the BBC it's getting slightly away from everyone looking over their shoulder. For a time, everyone was looking over their shoulder. We'll find quite a lot of the talent for An Easy Life will say, yes, put my name on it. And then the commissioner has got 10 things with this person's name on it. So you need to be very confident that you've got the right person for what you're doing, and that person is genuinely enthusiastic about it. That's the only thing. But it obviously helps. And if you can rope them into the point where, I mean, I write my own. In my case, I write my own documents to sell to the BBC. And so that they're mine. But I get sent things, often very good things, incidentally, and so ideas I'm really interested in. But and one or two I have said yes, if it went ahead, I do. But the trouble is, mine were already underway in the last 2 years. That's happened. But people tend to go for the same relatively small group of people who they think will sell presenter-led documentaries. I think the ideas are more important.